Grandpa Nooby reporting for duty with part 2 of the health of COD, specifically the health of Black Ops 6. I'll leave a link in the description to the first video that talked mainly about cheating, which is existential in Call of Duty, meaning having being in time. And it definitely exists in time. It exists right now. It existed in Modern Warfare 3. I won't get into it. I've already discussed it. Today we're going to talk about a couple of things. The software itself and the connectivity, because those are the two interactions that affect the game. You got the software, couldn't play without it. You got the connectivity, couldn't play without it. The only other thing you can't play without is you and me, and we have no problems whatsoever, right? We're perfect. So why am I qualified to make a statement here? And a lot of this is just going to be opinion and observations on my part. Well, yes, I was a fighter pilot, but for about half of my fighter career, I was in the Air National Guard flying the F-4 out of Alabama. And therefore, I needed to get another job. I was always pulled to the technology arena, so I got a job in high tech, first as a defense contractor, then as a senior manager at Microsoft, then as a senior manager in the IT department of an international British bank, and then finally as the chief technology officer and the chief information officer, meaning I was responsible for all the IT for a multinational large healthcare company based in Asia, and providing healthcare services in 10 countries in the region. So I have a little bit of experience in delivering client-server applications, software as a service applications, infrastructure as a service applications, and managing those from the Microsoft viewpoint, but also from the Chief Technology Officer and Chief Information Officer viewpoint. That was my life. Here we go. As I've already said, there are two aspects to this game that affect us as users. One is the software, the other is the connectivity. As far as the software is concerned, and I have been responsible for developing a lot of software that runs with millions of users, maybe not as big as Call of Duty, but it's the same principle. At one point, I had more than 300 developers on my team that I managed worldwide. It appears to me that the software is pretty solid in that we can have a gaming experience. How good that gaming experience is, well, that's up for debate. But in general, it's a good game. It's fun to play. I enjoy it. I don't like going against cheaters, but the cheaters aren't beating me most of the time anyway. Starting with Modern Warfare 2, there were bugs that existed in the game the entire life cycle of Modern Warfare 2 and Modern Warfare 3. For example, once you rank the XRK Stalker up to the maximum, you could not put the little charm on it that indicated that you were a master with the weapon. I know that's a small thing, but it's just one example. There were many others in the game. And constantly we were getting events where the events were not unlocked or portions of the events would not operate properly. And what that indicates to me as a former senior manager of an executive manager of development on large operations is that there is a problem with the testing of the software. And I kind of feel for Activision here because we are always screaming for fixes to be immediate. They comply a lot of the time, and really what they're not doing is running a full suite of regression testing on the software before they put it out. I'm almost positive of that. Otherwise, the software wouldn't regress to where former bugs are now in the game again. Bugs that have been solved in the past are in the game. The second thing they're not doing is enough user testing. And here is where I can fault them. I don't have a heart for them because there are tens of thousands of potential users out there who will be willing to provide free user acceptance testing. I'm one of them. You send me the software and I will definitely test it for you because I'm on the game each and every day. So there's no excuse. We would be able to find some of the simple bugs like the new event doesn't work, or this part of the new event doesn't work, or all of a sudden when I'm in game, it changes my loadout or it changes the weapon that I'm using. One time I was in the face-off mosh pit where there are no streaks and I was gacked by a Hellstorm missile. I don't know if it came from the Hollywood studio next door and just happened to fall into our game. Don't know how that happened. but that is something that I would report. And unfortunately, that's one of the few games I wasn't recording because I think people would really laugh at that. I know I did. I was completely surprised. So testing is probably the issue. And also, when you're developing code, it goes along these branches called code control. And what you're supposed to be doing is using the latest branch or the appropriate branch to develop your code. Then that goes through all of the testing, the regression testing, which is going to be automated, the user acceptance training, the quality assurance, those sorts of things. I suspect, and I'm fairly strong in that supposition, that the developers who are situated all over the world, if you take a look at the credits on Call of Duty, you'll see how many contracting companies are involved. You'll see how many sub-companies of Activision that are involved. I suspect that there's some confusion as to what's the active branch in the development, and fixes get developed on older versions of the code. The version control, I think, is probably needing some attention. So that's the software side. It's mostly version control. It's mostly testing, regression testing, user acceptance testing, that sort of thing, because hands down, these people are awesome at developing games. Let's move to the server side. All of us have experienced lag out, and why don't I just replay real quickly what Nadeshot said. It was in the part 1 a couple of days ago video that I released.
The players on the other team seem normal, and I feel like I'm about to have a normal Skyline hardpoint. But then I look up left at my telemetry or whatever the hell you call it. It says I'm on 20 ping, but I've got like a half a second delay on my bullets being shot from my gun. And I feel like I'm just getting absolutely pissed on, even though this number is telling me that I have a low ping, a low digit ping, but it feels terrible.
Yeah, so all of us have experienced a bit of lag out. We've experienced freezing. We've experienced all of these things. And time again, we tend to chalk it up to the server because we can see our ping and we can see the amount of packet loss going on. And as a sidebar, how do you see that? We go into settings, interface, and I'll duck out of the way here. You can see telemetry there, server latency and packet loss. Turn those on. I turn everything on to make sure I have everything. And then up in the upper left side of your screen during game, you will see what your ping is. That's how fast you send a signal to the gaming server and it returns to you. And that can be affected by a lot of things like the amount of jumps in between, the power of the accepting server, the speed of your home internet connection, those sorts of things. But generally, it's most affected by the server latency on the server side itself, in my experience. Now, some people may have other experiences. So turn on your telemetry, and then you'll be able to keep track of it. But let's say that you have a very high ping. High numbers, bad. Low numbers are good. And what the low numbers on a ping means is that your signal is getting to the server and back, so your control inputs. And it's a client-server system where you control the software on your side, and it sends certain messages to the server side. The server, wherever it is, decides to whether or not you got the kill, if you were aiming correctly, if the enemy was already dead, if you were already dead, those sorts of things. And how can that possibly happen? Well, in Singapore, when I lived there for most of the last decade and a half, I ended up with a 300 ping, which is awful. If you can get to like a 20 ping, you're awesome. If you can get to a 30 ping, you're still pretty good. Once you start getting up in the 50 to the 150, what that means is that the enemy will see you before you see them. They'll get off the shot before you can get off the shot, and sometimes you may be dead before you even pull the trigger. You think you're alive, you think they're cheating. Well, in Singapore, I had a 300 ping for the entire time I was there, which was close to 8 years. That meant that a weapon that had, let's say, a 250 millisecond kill time, the person would kill me before I even saw them on the screen. So that was pretty mysterious to me. Once again, I thought people were cheating until I realized that I had the 300 ping. And what can you do about your ping? There are some actions you can take. That's beyond the scope of this video here, but just turn on your telemetry. The servers and the server control is pretty difficult for me to find information on, but it's not important because we're not going to be splitting atoms in this video. This is a video where we just discuss these items. And the best I can tell, 2 or 3 people are involved. Of course, Activision themselves, Blizzard, they owned by Activision and by extension owned by Microsoft. And Demonware, maybe some server control software. The servers themselves, there are about 30 to 35 of them placed around the world. Here's a map of what I found for the Black Ops 6 beta. So keep that in mind. So now what we have are servers spaced around the world. The closer you are to a server, like we've already discussed, probably the faster ping you're going to have because your control inputs don't need to have so many hops. So if I'm in Birmingham, let's say, and I'm playing and I'm hooked up to a California server, my message may go through Atlanta, which is back going east, and then it may go through St. Louis, it may go up north through Seattle, and then come back down. Versus if I go directly to the server, it's going to be a lot faster ping. I'm going to have a better experience, and I'm going to have the opportunity to be very competitive in the game versus the higher ping, the more stops along the route, which will directly impact my gaming experience and my apparent skill level compared to the other players that have the smaller ping. Once again, here's Nade's shot on server location and ping as it applied to his professional Call of Duty matches.
There's a team called ATZ, and all 4 players were from California. And so if you played them and they were the higher seed on the ladder, they had a better record, they were like a top 10 team, that means that they would host 2 out of the 3 games that you played versus them. And all 4 of them on a West Coast California host, it was almost impossible to beat them. It was almost impossible to beat them because the network delay between you pinging to their host across the country, it was almost impossible to overcome that. Bro, I'll be on a server here in Texas pinging to Atlanta where I got 17 to 20 millisecond ping. I feel like that I'm still in 2008 playing on that West Coast server. There is no consistency with the network that you play on, these servers that you play on.
So that's basically how the system works. I know there are a lot more things that we can go into technically. I mean, I sat in the meetings, I did the design work myself, I did the development work myself on these multinational complex systems, but it all boils down to the same thing. If the software is good, you'll have a good experience. If the connectivity is good, you'll have a good experience. Now that leads us to, what is the problem? Why are people lagging out? Why are people freezing sometimes? Why do you pull the trigger and a second or 2 later the bullet fires? Okay, is that a server problem? Is it a software problem? At best I can tell on the answer is yes. So are there enough servers worldwide? I don't think so. I don't think there are enough servers to keep the ping down for all of the users worldwide. But then let's say that there are. Let's just imagine that there is a server in every kitchen in the world for those of us who play Call of Duty. Well, guess what? If the software is bad, your ping is still going to be bad because what you're doing is you're delaying on the user side, on the client side, on your console, on your PC, sending out the message. Have I seen this before? Yes. When I was the chief technology officer, I was brought in on a situation where tens of millions of people were using a specific client server system. The responses were glacier in their pace. They were agonizingly slow. They were probably 100, 200 times longer than they needed to be, instantaneous versus taking an hour. So there are certain things you can do. You can add more servers to split the load. You can add more CPU in the servers. You can add more random access memory in the servers to make the load go faster. But the bottom line is, and let's go back to the software discussion, if the software is bad, if the software is causing the issues, it doesn't matter. You're still going to get that slow response. Software can leak memory or hold memory in the computer forever, and that memory keeps building and building and building and building and building until you get the slow situation. That happens for us on the client side possibly if the software is bad. And I think given the testing issues, given the regression of the software when they deliver it, the software needs some work. Okay, let's compare the servers spread around the world to a golden serving tray. Let's say that it's solid gold. King Solomon himself, the richest man in the history of the world, never had a tray so nice. It's the finest tray. People tell me it's the best tray they've ever seen. Okay, you've got that golden serving tray. Now, let's say that you go outside and you gather leaves and sticks and wood and you cook a steak and put it all together. Leaf, stick, wood, a little bit of sand, maybe some dirt, weeds, whatever you find outside, along with that steak, and you put it on this fantastic golden serving tray. Well, when you walk in with that thing, doesn't matter how good the tray is, if the meal is bad, then the guests that's sitting at the table will not be happy. So let's think of that serving tray. We imagined it was the servers and this wonderful steak, but with these other things added to it as the software. Doesn't matter how good the servers are, the software has to be bang up. All right, so I'm just not going to complain only. What I'm going to do is I'm going to propose some solutions. What I would do if I were sitting in the driver's seat like I used to be in about half of my technology career. The first thing I would do is look at what the contractors are doing, whether it's development, whether it's server management. I mean, like I said, I couldn't see exactly who all the contractors were for all of the items. In fact, I even looked at the credits. You know how you can see the credits, who's working, the names of the people who are working on Call of Duty? Go to Settings, Account and Network, and select credits, and the thing will run for about 15 and 20 minutes, give you the names of hundreds of people who are working on this game. So I can tell a lot by the offices that they work for, how many developers, how many QA testers, what companies are working, how many HR people are working on this game or supporting this game. So for example, on the network side, I went to Demonware to see how many people they had working the servers. You can tell how many people there are, but they did not divide them up into the offices, into the services that they support. So it's very difficult to say, oh, they have X amount of people on server authentication, on server security, whatever it is they're working on, server development, X amount of people. They just gave the complete number of people that are working at Demonware supporting Call of Duty. I don't know. I'm a suspicious guy, especially since I'm sitting in that seat, right? I'm the chief technology officer here. We're imagining, looking down, and I'm saying, okay, there are 50 people here. What are they doing? Because if too many of them are working in one area or another, then I know what to expect in the product that I'm getting. So what are my recommendations? The first thing I would do, like I said, is I would look at the contractors and make sure that they're organized effectively and make sure they have the tools they need to perform the jobs that they've been given, that they've contracted for. Make sure they're hitting the right branches of the code. Make sure that the code is under draconian control. If there are too many people touching the code, limit the amount of people who can touch the code. Next, I would just and this is probably the most important part of the whole thing. When I worked for Microsoft, I regularly met with Steve Ballmer, the CEO. Great guy, smart guy. After I became the chief technology officer of this multinational corporation, I met with Satya Nadella because Microsoft was providing important support to us and to our customers. Who is Satya Nadella? For those of you who don't know, he is the CEO of Microsoft. He took over after Steve Ballmer. He is an absolute genius of a man. He is as smart as any individual that I have ever encountered. And he is also a very nice guy and a reasonable person. When I said, if we move our stuff to your Microsoft servers and there is a security problem, who is going to talk to the press with me? And Satya Nadella said, I will stand up there and talk to the press. So yeah, here's Grandpa with Satya Nadella, and don't think it's Photoshop, because Photoshop could never create so handsome of a face, or my face either. Fess up to him. And what are you going to fess up to? You're going to say, we are hurting. Activision, you bought us. We told you we would provide this service to your customers, and we are hurting. And Microsoft as a company, yes, they care about profits, but in my almost decade there, they cared most about the customer experience because they realized if you have a happy customer, you have a returning customer. So they would spare no expense to make sure that the customer is happy. And one of the salespeople implied to our customer that they had $20 million worth of software that they had not paid for. The customer was unhappy. I went to Mr. Palmer, Steve, as he always liked to be called, and said, we got a problem here. And he said, just make it right. Give them the software. Keep them happy. So I was very impressed with that. Satya Nadella is the same way. Keep the customer happy. Sir, we have a problem. We have a problem with connectivity, but most importantly, I think we have a problem with software. And I think what Satya Nadella would do is start checking off the list. We have this Microsoft Azure cloud that is in more than 300 locations. So currently Call of Duty's in 30 to 35 locations, more than 300 locations worldwide. Let's just do it and move the servers into that. Now, that's not an instantaneous thing. That's going to be a fairly long migration. May not be in Black Ops 6, but perhaps in the next iteration. There we have taken care with a check mark of any connectivity issues. We have servers close to the players wherever they're playing. The next thing I would do is attack the software. I would just run full regression tests on scheduled updates. Don't do the minor updates and continuously release those. Full regression tests. And what that's going to mean is you might have to halt updates for a while you get the code healthy, while you make sure that everybody is developing off the same branch, while you designate what that branch is and make sure that access to previous branches by developers is an access by exception and not by rule. In other words, you need to get permission to access a previous version. Maybe there is a code library that you need or specific function that would help you develop the fix or the new release that's coming out. But in general, developers should not be able to download branches. It should be checked out for a limited amount of time, and keeping it on their system should be by exception, especially when a new branch comes out and you're already working on an old branch. When you deliver your software back in, you're going to overwrite some fixes by other people. I know that they're going to say, oh, we've taken care of that. Our software doesn't allow that. Believe me, I don't believe it. I'm sitting in that chair and I've seen it happen myself. The community is going to have to accept updates at a less frequent level. So rather than having small problems that we insist get fixed, we're just going to have to accept that in 30 days they're going to fix all of the problems. I know they're trying with the X feed COD updates, with the release notes, with the blog, with those sorts of things. But what they're doing is they're telling you what's happening after it's already happened. What they need to do is say, yes, we acknowledge this error, this error, this error, this error. Here's our schedule for fixing. We're going to do our best to stick to it, and that would build trust within the community. Now to the more controversial solutions. As far as the software itself, to handle the cheating, to handle controlling the updates, those sorts of things on consoles and on PCs, what I would consider doing or look into doing is virtualizing the whole thing. So that means mini PCs delivered to your PC, a little PC delivered to your console. I mean, the thing's already 200 and something gigabytes large. What would that do? Well, you take away all admin privileges to everybody for that virtual PC. People can't add cheats into it, nor can they mod it in any way, shape, or form. And you don't have to have a full virtual PC. I mean, you look at Linux, you can have a lightweight operating system that is completely locked down that people cannot add mods to. And also, for I imagine the PC people, you can add software to your PC that has absolutely nothing to do with Call of Duty, and perhaps it impacts Call of Duty in the connectivity or in the memory airspace. It clashes with it. So I think virtualizing would be something they should look at. Move to the Microsoft Azure cloud. I've already said that. That would put the servers closer to everybody in the world and drive down the ping, the response time, and give a better user experience. Yeah, Microsoft's going to have to eat some money on that, because I know one group in Microsoft will charge another for the services. It is at a discounted rate, but just say, we're going to accept the bullet this time and then everything's going to be great in the future. And here's probably the most controversial controversial. Activision is a company that continuously seems to want to indoctrinate us as to their political, social, and geophysical points of view. Hey, guess what, guys? We don't care. We're there to play a game. We're not there to learn what you think about this particular social issue. We don't care what you think about your politics or what's happening geophysically around the world. We don't care. We're there to play Call of Duty. Many of us may agree with you on one or all of your points. Some of us may disagree with you on all of them. That shouldn't matter. We're all customers. You treat us all the same and you give us a good experience. You know what? If you want to support a particular candidate or a particular social cause or a particular geophysical, ecological cause, you know where you do it? On your own individual social media. Don't garbage up our game with it. And you know what it shows me? That you're putting focus on stuff that does not support the game. We don't care about any of it. We care about the performance of the game. And if you have people, if you have cycles of thought that are directed at these things, and it happens a lot because you put out these crazy messages that we all have to read, then you're not focusing on the right thing. And if you have people not focusing on the right thing, I say you get rid of them, because I'm a customer and your reputation is suffering because you live in a very cloistered environment where everybody is echoing the same things in those areas. Like I said, many of us may agree on them. Many of us may disagree, but it should never come to that. There it is. My thoughts on a very high level, and from sitting in the seat before where a lot of those managers are sitting, what I think is happening with the connectivity. It's not just connectivity, it's software. You know, we talked about the golden platter. We talked about things that we can do to improve delivery of the software. I'd like to hear your opinions. What is your experience, without getting into the bits and bytes here, because I didn't want my own eyes to glaze over, much less anybody else's. That is the high level view of what I think is going on based on my experience sitting in that chair doing the same sorts of things. As always, I'd appreciate a like and subscribe, and helps me, helps the family. And I'll say one more thing. If there's anybody in Activision who would like to respond to some of these questions or concerns that I've raised here, maybe some of them I don't need to worry about, maybe some of them I do, I would be happy to talk to you on that. Would love to get it online. If not, fine. Take care, everybody. Have a wonderful and fulfilling COD day. Talk to you later. Cheers and peace.